Night changes the mind in ways daylight never does. During the day, fear stays in the background, diluted by movement, responsibility, and constant interaction. Problems feel manageable because action is available. The mind is busy responding to the external world. But at night, when the body becomes still and the world quiets, the mind turns inward. Thoughts that felt distant hours earlier suddenly feel urgent. Small uncertainties grow into looming threats. The same fears that felt tolerable in sunlight feel overwhelming in darkness. This shift is not weakness, it is human psychology under reduced distraction. Nighttime anxiety has existed as long as conscious thought itself. Long before neuroscience named it, ancient thinkers observed the same phenomenon. When action stops, imagination takes over. When noise fades, unresolved thoughts rise. When the mind is left alone, it searches for danger. The Stoics understood this pattern clearly. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor surrounded by war, plague, political betrayal, and the constant threat of death, wrote about his resistance to facing the day. He described waking with reluctance, weighed down before anything had even happened. If a man with absolute power struggled internally, it reveals something essential. Fear is not a personal failure. It is a condition of awareness. The Stoics never denied fear. They did not shame it, suppress it, or pretend it could be eliminated. Instead, they studied it. They treated fear as a natural response that becomes destructive only when misunderstood. What troubled them was not fear itself, but the way the mind grants fear authority when it is left unexamined. Night amplifies fear, not because it creates new dangers, but because it removes the structures that usually keep fear in check. Fear intensifies at night for several predictable reasons. First, there is the absence of action. During the day, anxiety can be converted into movement. A problem can be addressed. A message can be sent. Even avoidance requires effort. At night, action is unavailable. The body lies still, but the nervous system remains alert. With nowhere to discharge mental energy, anxiety turns inward and loops endlessly. The mind searches for resolution where none is possible. Second, there is isolation. Human beings regulate their emotions socially. Conversation, presence, and even routine interaction ground perception. At night, those anchors disappear. The mind becomes its own echo chamber, replaying thoughts without external correction. Third, there is darkness itself. The Stoics understood that uncertainty breeds fear, and darkness is the ultimate uncertainty. When vision is limited, imagination fills the gaps. The mind projects threats into the unknown. Finally, there is exhaustion. A tired mind is less capable of rational judgment. Emotional regulation weakens. Thoughts lose proportion. What would normally be dismissed becomes convincing. None of this is mysterious. It is structural. Seneca observed that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Night removes the interruptions that usually restrain imagination. Fear becomes louder, not because it is more accurate, but because it is unopposed. The rational mind that keeps fear proportional during the day is offline. The anxious mind takes control. The Stoics did not attempt to silence fear. They removed its ability to surprise. One of their most misunderstood practices was the premeditation of adversity. On the surface, it sounds pessimistic. In practice, it is preventative. The Stoics advised confronting feared outcomes intentionally during calm moments rather than allowing them to ambush the mind later. Fear thrives on novelty. When a feared scenario has already been examined, it loses its power to shock. This practice is not about imagining catastrophe endlessly. It is about replacing vague dread with clarity. When the mind knows what it would do if something went wrong, fear loses its urgency. The unknown becomes familiar. Nighttime anxiety feeds on surprise. Preparation dissolves surprise. What the mind has already faced no longer feels threatening. Fear does not disappear, but it loses authority. Another core Stoic principle addresses nighttime anxiety even more directly, the distinction between what can be controlled and what cannot. Anxiety almost always arises when this boundary is blurred. Most nighttime fears concern outcomes that cannot be resolved in the present moment. Future events, other people's decisions, health uncertainties, long-term consequences. The mind demands certainty where certainty cannot exist. This demand creates suffering. The Stoics did not attempt to force certainty, they limited attention. When fear arose, the question was not how to eliminate it, but whether it concerned something within present control. If not, attention was withdrawn deliberately, not through denial, but through refusal to negotiate with the uncontrollable. Energy spent on what cannot be changed produces nothing but exhaustion. The Stoics treated attention as a finite resource. Nighttime anxiety is often the result of misallocated attention. They also understood that the mind resists sleep when it senses unfinished business. Unexamined reactions demand replay. Suppressed emotions demand expression. This is why the Stoics practiced a nightly review, not to judge themselves, but to process the day deliberately. By revisiting thoughts, reactions, and decisions before sleep, emotional residue was cleared before it could surface later. What is acknowledged no longer needs to intrude. Sleep requires psychological closure, not just physical rest. This practice was not emotional indulgence, it was mental hygiene. The Stoics believed that an unexamined day followed a man into the night. Fear often appears at 3 a.m. not because it is new, but because it was ignored earlier. The nightly review gave the mind a container. It replaced random intrusion with intentional reflection. When fear still felt overwhelming, the Stoics widened perspective. They practiced deliberate distancing, a reminder of scale, a reminder of impermanence. Marcus Aurelius frequently zoomed out in his thinking, placing individual worries within the vastness of time and existence. This was not meant to minimize suffering, it was meant to correct distorted perception. Fear feels absolute when examined too closely. Distance restores proportion. This perspective did not erase fear, it reduced its dominance. When the mind sees itself as part of something larger, individual anxieties lose their claim to urgency. The Stoics understood that fear contracts perception. Perspective expands it. Expansion restores balance. Nighttime anxiety feels deeply personal, but it follows universal psychological rules. The Stoics did not treat fear as an enemy to be fought. They treated it as information to be interpreted correctly. Fear signals uncertainty. Uncertainty demands judgment. Judgment must be disciplined. This is the Stoic response. They replaced chaos with structure. Before sleep, they processed the day. They confronted one fear deliberately. They reminded themselves of what lay outside their control. They widened their view beyond immediate concern. This was not ritual, it was training. Fear loses power when it encounters preparation, clarity, and proportion. The Stoics were not immune to fear. They were trained in responding to it. They did not expect peace without effort. They expected calm to follow discipline. Marcus Aurelius did not write for reassurance. He wrote to correct himself. His reflections were reminders, not comfort. The Stoic approach to fear is not to soothe it, but to understand it well enough that it no longer dictates behavior. Night will continue to magnify fear. That is its nature. But fear does not deserve obedience simply because it is loud. The mind does not need silence to rest, it needs order. Fear is not a signal to panic, it is a signal to examine. When fear is faced deliberately, it loses urgency. When it is contextualized, it loses scale. When it is accepted as part of awareness, it loses authority. This is not comfort. This is control. If this reflection slowed your thinking, remain with that stillness. That pause is where discipline begins. Think like a Stoic.